Morning everyone, I hope you're doing well. Now for some of you this might be your first lesson this week because obviously we had 2 insets this week. So let's have a look at our learning for today. So we're going to start again off with our reading, and we should finish our Lemony Snicket book today, so we're working on chapter 13. So again we're going to carry on with our mixed vipers, and let's see if you can work out which one of the vipers this question would relate to. So the question is, do you think Mr. Poe should feel guilty? Now I've taken a little extract and put it on the screen there. You can see that in front of you, but you are going to need a little bit more about the story. You have to have a good knowledge of the story to be able to answer this in full detail. So if we take this section where he ran up the stairs to the stage and took the document from Justice Strauss, this is dreadful nonsense, he said. So we can tell that he's obviously not happy about it, but we need to understand the text to think about whether he's going to feel guilty. So if we go back to the beginning of the text, remember he actually left the children with Count Olaf, and he didn't really want to answer questions about why they were going to stay with him. And probably, we said before on one of the questions that was because he didn't want to answer uncomfortable questions. So in my response to this question, I would say, I think Mr. Poe should feel guilty because he left the children with Count Olaf when he had a good idea that Count Olaf was unkind, but he didn't actually help the children. And then if I wanted to add to that, you could say, I think this because when Mr. Poe first introduced the children to Olaf, the Count suggested he would use the children's money for house improvements. So if you remember back, Mr. Poe said that wasn't going to happen, but he knew that Count Olaf wanted to do that. So really, in my opinion, I would say that he should feel guilty. Let's have a look at a different question this time, and I've just got a picture for help us answer this. And obviously this one is a prediction question, and the question is, predict what would happen in a sequel to this book. So we can see that in the text it suggests that they're not going to a very good place after leaving Count Olaf. So my answer for this one would be, I think the children will be put with another relative who is just as bad as Count Olaf, because the story implies they were heading in the wrong direction, and one which would cause them grief. So grief isn't a particularly nice thing. So again, they may be heading somewhere just as bad as Count Olaf for maybe the next sequel in this book series. So have a go at those questions. Hopefully you've enjoyed the Lemony Snicket book. It's the last questions on that book for today. Moving on to our maths then, and continuing our angles theme. So today in maths we're going to be finding or calculating missing angles on a straight line. Now the good thing about today's lesson is it's very, very simple in terms of the maths, in terms of the numbers that you're going to be calculating. It's just that you need to know a little bit about what the angles on a straight line add up to. So nice and easy for today. So let's have a think about what the angles on a straight line might add up to. So if we look at the diagram below to help us, you can sort of see there we've got 2 angles on that straight line that we've seen before. So if you think back to when we classified angles yesterday, you can see that we've got 2 90-degree angles. So angles on a straight line therefore must add up to 180. So we need to know that knowledge for today. Remember that, keep that in your mind, that the angles on a straight line always add up to 180 degrees. So let's see how we might solve this. If we know that the angles on a straight line add up to 180, and we want to find out what x is. Now it doesn't matter about what letter the angle is given, all that the letter shows us that we don't actually know the number. So we're just going to find out what x actually stands for. So if you've got 180 degrees across the whole line, and we know that we've got 100 on there, have a think about how you might find x. If you pause the video now and see if you can work out what x would be. Okay, so let's have a look at how we would solve this. So we know that we've got 100 degrees there. We know that the whole of the line is 180. So we're going to take 180 and we're going to take 100 from it. So x, therefore, is going to equal 80. Now, I'm not going to be doing column methods for today's lesson. You might want to. It doesn't matter if you choose to. It's not about the method you choose to do it, it's just about solving it. It should be relatively easy to solve these with some mental strategies. So let's have a look at a different one this time. So it's still on the straight line. This time the image though is upside down, but that doesn't make a difference. This time the letter is A. Again, it doesn't matter about the letter. And we need to find out what A is. Remember, the whole line is 180. Pause the video now, see if you can work it out before we solve it together. So for this one then, we're going to have 180 degrees and we're going to take away our known angle, which is 124, and we should be left with 56 degrees. So we could say A equals 56. Now just to check our answer if you're not sure, if we take 56 and 124, we should get back to 180 because we've got two angles and they need to add up to 180 there. So have a go at those, nice and simple to begin with, and then tomorrow we're going to be looking at angles in a straight line, but this time there's going to be two missing, two known angles, so slightly trickier. Keep going with those timetable Rockstars. I know quite a few of you are doing a really good job of those at the minute. If you want to be moved on to a different times table, just please get in touch with me and I can do that really quickly. And then carrying on with our writing and our news report. So today we're going to be looking at planning news reports and looking at how we might quote an eyewitness to our news report. So what we're going to do today is we're going to, if you've chosen this one, this is going to really helpful to you today. I'm going to show you how I would plan my news report based on this picture. Okay, so let's look at how we might begin to plan our news report based on our shark stuck in a roof. So obviously you need a headline that's got to be quite short and engage the reader straight away. So my one would be shark attack in village street. Now the reason I've chosen that is because normally you'd expect to see a shark attack in the water, so in a village street is quite unusual, so it might just grab the reader's attention enough for them to start reading my news report. Then we'd move on to our introduction. So for those that saw the lesson on Monday, you've seen my version of this already. But remember, today we're just planning it, so we're just going to make some notes. And I'm going to answer the 4 questions there. So the who would be the shark in residence roof. The what would be the shark that's fallen from the sky. The when, again you could make this up, but yesterday at approximately 3:15 p.m. You might want to include a date if it hasn't been reported on straight away, and the where would be Aston, a village in Oxfordshire. Okay, so that's just my notes for my introduction, and then the main body of the text is going to be in much more detail. It could be 3 or 4 paragraphs this section, but it needs to be in time order. So you can see my notes here for this section. Shark was being transported by helicopter to a nearby sea life centre. So again, starting to answer the why for the reader later on. Next part, expand on where it happened. So talking about the house in Oxfordshire and the time that it happened. Introduce potentially an eyewitness, so that's the homeowner, Mr. Smith, who called the police, and maybe bring in an expert from Oxford University who is an expert on sharks. Okay, so once I've got that written down, I can then use that to then form my writing and form my paragraphs from that. So let's look at, before we carry on with our planning document, let's look at the difference between direct speech or indirect speech, or sometimes called quotes. So what's the difference between the two? We're going to answer that now. So this is direct speech. So if we look at this phrase here, it says, "I bid you farewell, earthlings," shouted Iggy from the spaceship. So how do we know that that is direct speech? Well, a couple of things. Those bits in those inverted commas or speech marks is the actual words that Iggy said. And you can see the spoken words there. There's no change in order or the content of the words. So again, it's got to be exactly what every word that person said. Correct use of punctuation, look, within the speech marks. And obviously we need to tell the reader who spoke in there. Okay, so biggest clue for direct speech is your speech marks, and then we know when we write our news report that it was the exact words that eyewitness said. So let's look at that in a indirect speech context. So in this example, it says, "From his spaceship, Iggy bid farewell to the Earthlings." Now the same things happened, but this time we didn't use his spoken words of what he said. We just told that he said bye to the Earthlings. So no speech marks or no inverted commas. Some of the words were used, but they've been changed. So they're in different order, and you can see there that they've changed from first person I to third person, obviously using his name, Iggy. And there's no sort of reporting clause there. It's just a continuous sentence. Okay, so that's your very brief difference between direct and indirect speech. And in the next slide, I'll show you the difference between the two in the context of our shark text. So how might we include our quotes or in our shark text? Well, first one we might have, so this one, see if you can spot, this one would be obviously direct speech. So Mr. Smith, the homeowner, said, "I was reading a paper when I heard an almighty crash, and moments later I was showered in dust. When I looked up, all I could see was teeth. I was petrified." So because of the person it is as well, we can make it seem like he is, it fits that character, for example. So he's just a homeowner, he's not like an expert or a policeman or a spokesperson. He's just saying what he saw. So when you do quote particular people, it might be that you choose to do that quite informally, which I have done there. So phrases like almighty crash, not really what other experts might say or how you'd write in a normal news report. So you can swap the formality of the text with the direct speech there. And then the second one, we've got Mrs. Hughes, Oxford University professional. So she here hasn't been quoted. There's no speech marks. It's just it's reported, and you can see there's that phrase, reported that the great white sharks are incredibly tough and are able to survive out of the water for up to 30 minutes. So again, she's said that, but we've changed the order of the words maybe, and potentially shrunk her words down slightly to fit in the text. And then if we were finishing off with our latest developments paragraph, This is just what's going to happen after, or you might have found out, if you're the journalist, you might have found out what's going to happen next in the story, just to give the reader an idea of what is going to happen to the shark next. So the shark's been transported safely to the Sea Life Centre and will be able to see visitors in a few weeks after it is fully recovered. Now obviously, again, then notes, you would have to write that in the style of a news report when you come to write it. So have a go at planning your news reports. You don't have to write anything down necessarily, but use the planning format to help you with the structure and to help you form those paragraphs.